Good evening, folks, and welcome to the May 18, 2022 meeting of the Harbor Coastal Zone Management Commission. We should be available on our Zoom channel on LMC TV, though we do overlap tonight with the Army Corps of Engineers and streaming on YouTube. Motion to open the meeting.
So moved.
So moved, sorry.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, meeting is open. We have one applicant agenda item this evening, which is 120 Osborne. For the folks watching at home, this project was previously submitted to Harbor and Coastal Zone Management for a subdivision. The lot was subdivided with provisions that if there were a building proposed on the site, it would come back. Do we have the applicants present? Brittany, you are on mute.
We are here. Good evening, everyone. My name's Jarrett Williams. I'm here with Caroline Bolger with the property owners, and Eric Wilson is the architect, and we're going to defer to him for further discussion.
Okay, typically when we do, and I don't recognize any of you folks, if you've been before this commission, it's before my time. For a preliminary review, we will typically let you go through the project the way you want, and then we will give you ask you questions and give you feedback before sending you to go wrap up all the other things you have to wrap up, and then you will come back to us for a consistency vote, whether that happens the next time you come back or some number of meetings later. So I'm going to turn it over to you to let us know what you think we should know about this project, and then when you're done, I will ask you questions, and the other commissioners will as well, to let us know what we think we need to know about this project.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. This is Eric Wilson. I'm the architect for the project. I'm from Castle Architects, and Jared is the owner of the property. I thought I could be there in person tonight, so I'm driving back from the village of Minaret Hall right now, and so I don't have my drawings in front of me. But if Jared can share his screen and show some of the construction drawings, that would be very helpful. Is he able to do that?
Yes, I'm going to be trying to share the screen right now.
Okay, great. But as you mentioned, as he gets ready, this house is intended to fulfill all the requirements of the way that the house was zoned, and come back to this commission to meet all the requirements that were established at that time, which was in 2019. And the house is designed to fit within all the zoning setbacks. It's a standard residence. It's a two-story residence with a garage area built in as part of the residence, a single-family residence. And there's not much unusual about it. The stormwater management system was designed to comply with the zoning code and to prevent any additional runoff from leaving the site, and in compliance with the requirements of this commission. So, Jared, are you able to get that up yet? Not quite. Huh? So bear with us as we get the screen up there.
Yeah, can you guys tell me if you are able to see the PDF on your end?
No, we are not. I'm looking at Jarrett Williams's screen sharing, but I don't have the PDF visible.
All right, I'm going to try again.
But you guys all have our drawings and documents as
Yes.
part of our submission, correct? So
Yes.
You've had a chance
Yes, we
to
do.
look at it. So those documents show the elevations of the structure. They show the floor plans, the layout, and they also show the site plan, which you can hopefully see right now.
Yes.
So with that, we show the existing zoning setback, and that we're in compliance with those setbacks. We also are in compliance with lot coverage and the other requirements for this property. As you may recall from before when it was in front of you, this was separated off of a larger lot, this piece. And this piece of the lot is not directly adjacent to any other, it's mostly adjacent to residential, while the other piece of it is adjacent to what you could call a commercial or a medical, light commercial medical facility. So Jared, if you could just quickly page through the drawings, the next page. You know, this drawing shows the topography, and we can get back to this if you guys have questions specifically on the site plan.
Okay. I'm gonna try to get to
We'll
the
just quick-
page.
As you can see from the site plan, while we're still looking at it, there's a fairly steep grade at the front of the site where we're going up to a driveway to an entry carport area that then enters right into the garage and a standard porch on that side. Other than the footprint of the house, there's not a lot of other construction involved in this. And that area where the house is located does not have a lot of large trees and plantings in that area. So we're taking a site which has been intended for this purpose. And this is the exact footprint and location that was discussed in the previous SWIP, which was submitted to your committee or your commission as part of this project. So go ahead and can you go through the pages briefly at all?
Okay, I'll go to the next PDF.
Yeah, go ahead. Are they separate PDFs?
They are.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, well, if it's going to be this much delay between pages, I think we may just wait for you guys to move. So here's a site profile showing the grading adjustments as part of this plan and some details, which are part of what we're proposing to do with the new site construction. So here you can see a detail for protection of plantings and also some of the storm drainage details that are part of the proposed storm drainage mitigation measures that are part of the project. Go ahead to the next one.
See that.
Again, if it's not going to work, Jarrett, to move quickly, would you just let them ask their questions and not waste too much of their time?
Okay, I think now would be a good time for some questions
Okay.
while I get the other PDFs.
So the one of the privileges of being chair is to set the agenda. So I'll go first because I know what I want to talk about. We've had I'm in receipt of John Kellard's May 13 memo, and I find that it really usefully frames the discussion on a whole lot of the items that he asks about or directs you to give further input on are stormwater facing. So item number 14, copies of approvals for proposed water and sewer connection. This is, well, let me back up a second. I don't know how much you've dealt with the village of Mamaroneck, but all of us who live here know, I think, that 32 square miles of Westchester County drain into the Mamaroneck River and the Sheldrake Brook, and the two of them meet right in the middle of town. So stormwater is almost always an issue here. This property is in the Beaver Swamp Brook drainage area, which means that it's an even more sensitive watershed than some of the rest of the village is. So one of our major concerns with many properties, and certainly with this one, is where the water goes. So we need to make sure that we're compliant with the requirement that you not let any of the water leave the property. And with a property that's fairly steeply sloped like this one is, that requires that you make a record. And that's not an indication that anybody thinks you can't do it. It's just an indication that in order for us to cast our vote, we need to be careful that we have done our job and made sure that the record reflects that you meet all the requirements. So John Keller took a look at what you'd submitted and said that you need to document your water and sewer connections, of course, because on a property like this, if either one of them were to leak, it would create a problem. That you need to quantify the proposed area of disturbance on the plan. I didn't see it. If it was in there, I didn't see it, but it looked to me like, well, can you tell me what the footprint of disturbed area is, if you know, or do you need to do that calculation?
We included that number in our application. The footprint of disturbed area. Give me 1 second to pull that up safely here. 1 moment. Sorry, bear with me. It's in the application we sent you. So,
Yeah, and I'm not telling you it's not. I looked for it. I didn't.
okay, it's 0.18 acres of the 0.25 acre site. So it's a 1/4 acre site. It's 0.18 acres of disturbance.
Okay.
And that's on
Okay, that's
the,
useful.
Yeah.
That's useful. So that's over 2,000 square feet.
definitely.
If you, so we're gonna have, a need for stormwater quality control that covers, up to the 100-year storm and, holds the property at pre-development flow rates. And you need to provide treatment for the water quality volume. And, I think we're going to have, when we come back and review this, most of our attention is going to be focused on the SWIP.
Yeah.
You need to clarify whether the site plan proposes stormwater mitigation through the use of the 75 lineal feet of 36-inch diameter pipe. It wasn't entirely clear to me, and I think that it wasn't entirely clear to Kellert either. And I saw the hydrology report, but I didn't see any deep test results. And it's entirely possible that I missed something, but I think here you need tests that will show that you've got adequate separation between the rock on the property and the surface soil.
Got it.
This is the, we need a incorporating when you incorporate all of the SWIP type stuff into the site plan as text on drawings, it can be hard to follow. And we're going to need, in order for me to feel like I can vote on it, we're going to need an accompanying text report that lets me know that a stormwater engineer says that it's going to meet the requirement that we not have more water flowing off the property in basically any reasonably foreseeable circumstance than we have as a pre-development flow rate. You can't make it worse, right? We're in a, you get it. You're not telling me you don't understand it. You get it.
Nope.
You have an obligation to make sure that you're not, by developing this piece of property, making the stormwater situation any worse. Nobody's saying you can't meet that standard, but in order for us to vote on it, we want it to be very clear that a responsible professional is standing up for the work and saying this will accomplish that. I would encourage you to go, point by point carefully through, which I'm not going to do point by point, but go carefully through John Keller's memo, because he asks a bunch of pinpoint questions about what's contained in your SWIP, or makes or gives you guidance in what else needs to be present here. It's in stormwater, especially where I find that I need professionals to explain it to me instead of just intuitively knowing it. We're going to be heavily guided by that. Certainly I can speak for my vote and say I'm going to be heavily guided by that. I want to be able to say that the consultant that we use to look at these things tells me that I want to first be able to say that I can read your SWIP and know that an engineer who knows what he's talking about says that as a professional, he could stand by this report and say it meets the standard. And then I want to know that our consultant looks at it and says, he's satisfied everything. Your engineer has satisfied every requirement that we think he should have satisfied. It's all here. He's done the work to back up the opinion. So my primary focus on this was on the stormwater issue. Obviously it's where it is and the shape of the lot indicate that those are issues. I don't have questions that are not stormwater related, but I'm going to open it up to the other commissioners, starting with Randy, whether it's stormwater related and I haven't hit it, or if you've got another issue, floor is yours.
No, as usual, I thought the color questions are very focused and specific, and I look forward to seeing, I assume that the applicant is going to give us an answer to each point that's been raised. And, until we get that, I don't really know that we're in a position to say anything else. I think you focused on the key issues.
Okay, Jack,
No, I'm good.
Cammie?
I'm the same. I think I just need more information before I can give any comment on it.
Okay, various properties touch on different issues, folks. And, some things have floodplain concerns, some things have economic concerns, some things have significant habitat or historic or wetlands. This has a stormwater concern, and really that's the only thing we want to ask you detailed questions about. But we need to make sure that we are very sure about the stormwater aspect of this project. That includes not only in its finished condition, but in construction. We need to make sure that the soil siting is accurate, big enough, and realistically cabined, so that while you're building the property, you're not running soil runoff down into the street, into the stormwater drains, and creating either erosion or pollution hazards. We need to make sure that it's going to remain that way through the construction process. We need to make sure that the SWIP is going to be maintained. One of John Keller's notes is make sure there's a maintenance schedule in there so that we know that it's not going to become unmaintained and non-operational. Just think about water. Make sure that when you come back to us, we're going to be able to say, we know that the water is not leaving the property. Nothing bad is going in the water. It's not going to create a problem, and it's going to stay that way for the foreseeable future. Those are our concerns.
Excellent. Well, that's very clear and very, very well understood. So we get where you're coming from, and we will come back to you with exactly the answers to Keller's points and the drawings and the report that demonstrates to you that we were meeting all those requirements, both during construction and after completion of the project. So this is no problem. We'll do that, and we'll come back to you again with all that information.
Okay, terrific, and I look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, have the applicants been discharged, Brittany? All right, okay. We do not have administrative items on. If somebody's got something to raise as housekeeping business, now's the time.
Just a general question, if you don't mind my asking, does anybody have a sense of how much of our review is for stormwater versus sort of some of the other issues that you mentioned previously? By the way, John, really excellent piece there.
Thank you. Thanks, Jack.
You mean in terms of the population of applicants that come before us?
Yeah.
Stormwater is one of the more frequent issues, even sometimes on coastal sites.
Okay.
It comes up a lot, especially since we have we set a low threshold for the sites that require a full SWIP, including water treatment and stuff. It's at least partly an issue with many applications. If I were to pull a number off the top of my head, I would say that there's a SWIP needed in more than 60% of what we review. So it comes up a lot, and we have, fortunately, the state promulgates a stormwater design manual that gives the engineers a bouncing ball that they're simply supposed to be able to follow when they design it. And then we've got a capable engineer who's our consultant who looks at it, tells us whether it meets it. So in a sense, it's also kind of the easiest because it's often very straightforward. And John will simply tell us if they either haven't provided us enough information or if they don't meet the requirements. And it's much more common that they don't provide us enough information than that they've got a stormwater design that will not do the job. But in either case, we have a consulting engineer regularly here who can tell us we either lack the information or lack the capability that they're supposed to have.
Very helpful.
It's I freely admit stormwater is one of those areas that is least intuitive to me. So I am most completely guided by the consultants on that. Fortunately, we've got a good one on that. Okay, so with no housekeeping matter, we are supposed to do the minutes, but I have not really had a chance to read them carefully, which I do before I want to vote on them. So unless we have an urgent need to get those approved, I want to kick that to the next meeting.
No
That's
problem.
fine.
Not hearing any pushback. Okay, and with that, we have run our agenda. Preliminary reviews sometimes go very quickly and sometimes go very slowly. We have run our agenda for the evening, and we can adjourn. I will move to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second,
Back in.
All in favor?
aye.
We're adjourned. See you at the June meeting, folks. Thank you.
Night.
Have a good evening.